"If you bring another one to my bed, I'll kick you out," thought Tanya, and then she woke up. The room was dark. The airy, painful silence was broken only by the sniffling and snoring of her roommates. God, she ran her hand over her forehead. Why would I even think that? Well, yes, lately he and Valerie had been having problems, and even seemed that it might come to a divorce, but this? No. He is not a fool to take someone into the house after all. There are 3 little ones. Tanya tossed and turned on the hospital bed, trying to get comfortable. Sleep was not coming. Yet she came 10 days ago. More precisely, she was brought by ambulance on a stretcher. She didn't remember much, just the funny temperature glitches and the annoying voices. She was also begging to go home. She kept repeating that she had 3 little girls, and the eldest was only 3. The elderly doctor calmed her down, persuaded her. What kind of care can one have for children in such a condition? You have pneumonia. Your temperature is skyrocketing. Well, be a good girl, get well and go to the children. It is necessary to go to the hospital, honey, it is necessary. She was on the mend quickly. They promised to discharge her as soon as tomorrow on her word of honor that she would continue to take all the necessary medications at home. The children, the youngest, Sunaka, was 5 months old, and for some reason Tanya was most afraid that her daughter would forget her. Nonsense, she sternly said to herself. And anyway, instead of thinking all sorts of nonsense, it is better to sleep. Tomorrow morning Zina will come and I will go home. Tanya asked her friend to come ahead of time. There was no one to pick her up from the hospital. Valerie would not leave the children at home alone to bring her clothes. Nina, no problem, agreed. Have you told Vita that you are discharged? No, said Tanya reluctantly. I'll call you when I've talked to you. Oh, Zina, judging by her intonation, it dawned on her. Let's make a surprise then. Don't worry about clothes. I'll bring you something of mine. Come on then. Tanya didn't want to admit that she didn't really want to talk to her husband. Just before Sonia's birth, she found out that Vitya was cheating on her with some underage girl. Her husband swore and swore that all this meant nothing. Then Tanya, clenching her will into a fist, decided that the main task for her now is to safely give birth to a child. All the family friction could wait. And once the baby was born, she decided to give the relationship a second chance. After all, she thought, it was my fault too. I was completely lost in children. She still loved him, and she knew it. And children need a father after all. Vitya, seemingly pleased with his wife's decision, calmed down. But only Tanya repeatedly noticed how abruptly he rolled down the spite window as soon as she entered the room. She also saw how cold and aloof her husband had become. It was Vitya, always so gentle and caring. And although she promised herself that she would be more attentive to her husband, she found it increasingly difficult to go up to him and hug him. To get out of the hospital was happiness in itself, and if the spring sun began to warm up outside, Tanya stopped on the porch, breathed in the fresh air with pleasure. Of course, her breathing had not yet fully recovered, but this fresh breeze after the hospital's stuffiness. Zina shortly signaled her from the car. I'll come home and go straight to the bathroom. Tanya cheerfully promised, buckling up. I stink of medicine. Never mind, smiled her friend. Now you can wash yourself. You will smell like perfume again. The main thing is that you were cured. That's right. Zin, thank you for stopping by my place. And for picking me up. Come on, don't be silly. Tell me, what are you thinking about your husband? You were talking about divorce. I don't know, Tanya sighed. I honestly don't know, and I don't have the strength to decide anything. Let things go on as they are. Right too, agreed Zina, driving into the familiar courtyard. Yes, a voice sounded Vitya from the intercom. Zina winked at her friend and pressed her finger to her lips. It's Zina. I won't let you in. Tanya stared at her friend in amazement. What's wrong? She asked with one lip. Zina brushed it off. Tanya asked her to bring her a book of some kind. I see, Vitya answered grudgingly. I'll take it out. He came down in a minute. The heavy door opened with a creak, and Vitya froze, seeing his wife next to Zina. "Hi," he said without any expression. "What are you doing here?" "I was discharged," Tanya shrugged. "Well, let's go." He took a heavy hospital bag from his wife and quickly walked up the stairs. Tanya, quickly saying goodbye to her friend, followed. They went up silently. "And I am not alone," Vitya broke the tense silence. Olya came to help. Olya, Tanya shuddered. She knew very well who Olya was. The same miner with whom her husband had managed to get mixed up. He'd said it was over, that they weren't even in touch. So he was lying. Somehow it didn't surprise or even upset her. On the contrary, now that the deception was exposed, it even seemed to breathe easier. But what was going to happen now? They entered the apartment. Someone else's bag in the hallway, someone else's shoes. No children were heard. So Vitya began coldly. "Why did you run away from the hospital? Or, I don't know, discharged early?" "I was worried about you," Tanya mumbled confusedly. "I thought, how are you going to cope, not even to go to the store?" Well, her husband nodded and continued with the same icy, motoristly icy intonation. "There is fresh food in the house, and as you can see, the apartment is tidy. I hope it will be so in the future, because children need cleanliness." "Why are you saying this?" My wife didn't understand. "I'm going out. Since you're already home, my help is no longer Vitya. But I'm still..." "I was discharged early. You'll manage somehow," he smirked. "I love you," whispered Tanya. He turned over his shoulder and, stamping every word, he replied, "And I do not love you." Tanya, without another word, went into the bathroom. She wanted to wash her face. She took a little longer than necessary. She did not want to look at Olya. She didn't have to. Her husband and his young girlfriend left very quickly. Tanya opened the door to the nursery and quietly entered. The daughters, Yana and Alia, did not move at first. They didn't expect it, Tanya thought, and stretched out her arms to the children. "Well, Mommy's back." The girls rushed to her, "Mama." Holding the babies in her arms, inhaling the sweet smell of children, Tanya felt truly happy. Sanika was still asleep, but when she opened her eyes and saw her mother, she smiled happily. Tanya poured the soup made by her husband into the toilet without any regret. She could not bring herself to feed herself or the children with it. In the refrigerator, she found a packet of eggs and a piece of sausage. Luxury. Asking her neighbor to stay with the children for half an hour, Tanya went to get groceries. Some money, which would be enough for one trip to the supermarket, was left in her jacket pocket from her hospital days. In the evening, Zina stopped by. "You knew everything, didn't you?" Tanya looked her friend straight in the eye. "I stopped by the other day." Zina was clearly not enjoying the memory, and I saw her. "What was I supposed to do, Tanya? Tell you, and if you didn't believe me, not say anything? Well, neither. So I figured we'd just show up unannounced, whatever happens." "Come on," Tanya waved her hand. "You did the right thing. Maybe it's for the best." The next morning brought shocking news. The stash was empty. Tanya, just in case, several times looked into the wallet where she used to keep the cash. It was empty. "The kids caught a cold. We had to spend it on medicine," Vitya explained over the phone. "But we don't have any money now." Tanya could hardly speak from the shock. "We'll run out of food. How can I buy new ones?" "I'm sorry, I can't help," her husband replied dryly. "The paycheck is not coming soon." In the evening, after putting the children to bed, Tanya sat down at the computer and typed freelance into the search engine. The work was not easy, but it paid. Every day, Tanya delivered one story to a client. The biggest demand was for love stories and detective stories. They weren't hard to write, but they took a lot of time. She almost completely stopped sleeping. The day went on household chores and fiddling with the children, and after 10 p.m. began a second shift, which lasted until 4 to 5 in the morning. "You're working too hard," Zina kept saying, looking at her exhausted friend. "But smile, Tanya. I have money to live on. Wait, I'll also learn to write scripts." Vitya, then the child support pay. Sure, laughed Tanya, the whole 7,000. The king is generous. You cannot deny yourself anything. Freak. Zina grimaced. They never spoke of it again. Vitya appeared from time to time. Once a week he went out with the children for a couple of hours. The amount he gave for their maintenance did not embarrass him at all, did not seem ridiculous. Tanya didn't want to discuss it with him. Her love for this man was too terrible a disappointment, and she didn't want to talk to him again. Rumor had it he was already living with some new woman. Not with Odhya, with another woman. And it was unclear how she could fall in love so quickly, create a family, and not even get a divorce. They divorced a year and a half later. Vitya remarried and told his children that soon he and his new family would be leaving for the south forever. She was relieved. Too often the children, after seeing him, were upset. Vitya preferred to send them to the children's playrooms, while he himself went to a cafe. The girls told me that they never really got to talk to their daddy, and yet they took his departure as a betrayal. In general, they're right, said Tanya to her friend, it is a betrayal. So they saw each other at least once in a while. And on the other hand, yes, and God be with him. Less will grieve them with their neglect. And what about you? Zina asked sadly, don't you feel sorry for yourself? Tanya hesitated for a minute with her answer. Probably not, she admitted. I'm finally disappointed in him now too. The work was going well. Since Anya began to combine writing with the preparation of the scripts, her earnings increased, and the other day something unusual happened. In the morning she got a call from a middleman. Tanetka, surprise. Vova, Tanya answered in a sleepy voice. It's 6 in the morning, so for God's sake, be quick and specific. Okay. Vova was in a fantastic mood. Guess who bought your last script? Well, she was beginning to lose patience. The BBC, Tanya. And just so you know, you're a talent, and they want to sign you. What did you say? Tanya sat up abruptly, almost waking Santka, who was nestled next to her. They bought my script, and they want me to write more. It finally came to pass. Vova laughed. And yes, my dear, in a week you have a flight, so think of where to take the kids. What flight, where? To London, to sign a contract. I've already booked the ticket, but in the meantime, rest and tidy up. Let's show the Brits that we're not eating our own bread. What are you implying? Tanya tried to speak sternly, but it did not work very well. The smile interrupted the harsh intonation. Well, hesitated Vova. Go to the hairdresser. Buy a new dress. No offense, Tanechka, but because of work you're a little neglected. All right, you rascal, she laughed. I solemnly promised to devote today to making myself look decent. 2 days later, Tanya was walking along the shore of the Mediterranean Sea. London was still a few days away, and the shock of the upcoming event was so great that she wanted to do all sorts of nice, stupid things. For example, to go to Italy for 3 days. The children were taken by the faithful Zina, and Tanya wandered all day long in fashionable boutiques, drank freshies in numerous case, and bathed in the sea. Suddenly, she began to like herself a lot. A beautiful, not yet old woman who had won. Conquered what? Yes, everything. Survived the betrayal of her beloved husband, left with 3 children in her arms, but she did not break. She found a suitable job, and now she's flying to London to sign a contract with one of the leading international channels. And right now she's just a slim, brown-haired woman in a fluttering beach dress. She's walking along the beach barefoot, and the seagulls are circling in the sky. Beautiful. Excuse me, miss. Someone called out to her in English. Before she knew it, a tall stranger caught up with her. Yes, I could be wrong, but I think I know you. Are you Tatiana Lenova? She looked more closely. The man's face seemed familiar to her. Fool, she muttered in Russian. Under her breath, the whole world knows him, and you're the only one who slows down. I beg your pardon. No, it's okay. It's really me. Tanya quickly switched to English. I was offered a role in the movie based on your script. Smiled modestly the man. And you know, after reading it, I immediately agreed. You are very talented, Tanya. Incredibly talented. Coffee? She suggested, bewildered by this unexpected praise. Wait, coffee? You dragged him off to coffee just like that. Zaina was indignant. Oh, Zaina, I was just inhumanly confused. He's such a celebrity, so many people like him, a talented man, and suddenly he praises me, many. Do you understand? Zaina winked meaningfully. Well done. Know our people. And then ranted Tanya. Not paying attention to her friend's retort, we had dinner together. Zaina inquired busily. And in the evening I had a flight, but we met in London, and he said he wished we had exchanged phone numbers. I was busy all day, and I just flew home. Zin, I will have to move to London together with the kids for the duration of the work with the channel. For 3 years for now, and then, who knows? The phone in my pocket vibrated. Tanya, it's Vitya. I'm in town, and I want to see the children. How nice of you to think of them, she grumbled. Don't be sarcastic, he asked softly. Is that so? Why not? Well, all right then. After all, it was good of you to come. I need you to sign a permit to take the children abroad. Meet me in half an hour at the cafe in front of my house. When are you going? Vitya was spinning a cup of coffee on a saucer, holding the handle and turning it left and right. The sound was disgusting. 2 weeks later. That's how it works, he said thoughtfully. Yes, that's how it works, Tanya said impatiently, putting the signed documents in her purse. And in the meantime, you have enough time to talk to the children. And then I will not see them for 3 years. In the voice of his ex-wife, there was a tone of metal. It did not bother you when you went to bask in the southern sun. Vitya looked longingly at Tanya, but she was unstoppable. How many times did you call them? 2 times. 3. How many times have you come to visit them? You don't care about the kids, Vitya. You can make all the comedy you want, but please not in front of me. Don't be so mean. He tried to take her hand. Tanya managed to yank it away. All right, fine. I was mean to you. But I myself, it was a crisis. Tanya, understand. I wanted to change something, to escape. You did that, she grinned. I don't argue. And then there was a text message for you to look at. The text on the screen was in English. I'm counting the days until you get here. I can't wait to see you again and to meet your children. I found a cozy cafe here. We'll be sure to stop in together, okay? And then Vitya continued with a murdered look. I started thinking about you more and more. And only recently I realized how much I need you. And if you'll only let me... Gunsmith, she said suddenly, looking into her ex-husband's face. He had aged. The once crisp oval of his face, molten, and his beard was almost entirely grey. What? There was no crisis, Vitya, she explained. Simply you are bored with the life, the duties. It happens to everybody. But not everybody abandons his family to the mercy of fate. But you did. Of course, she got up and threw her coat on, getting ready to leave. I apologized, but only because it turned out that in the new family too, there is a routine and responsibilities and everyday life. At least the ex-wife is not bad now, right? That's not gonna fly, Vitya, I'm sorry. He smiled sadly. You used to be softer. More naive, Tanya corrected him, and you paid for it. But you know, all my current confidence, calmness is a weapon from naivety, which you sold me in exchange for your freedom. You can see the children tomorrow. She walked down the street, smiling. Tonight she and the children would bake scones, and before going to bed, she would be sure to read aloud to them. And in 2 weeks they would dive into London together. Its smells, its sounds, its traditions. A new, unfamiliar chapter of life will begin, but it, like all the subsequent ones, will definitely be happy.